Hello and welcome back to Game Brigade. I am Brian Greer, and if you are new to the show, we do reviews, previews, playthroughs, and have conversations on our favorite board games. So if you're new to the show, please consider joining the community by hitting the subscribe button. Today we're talking about Monster Hunter World, the board game. This is one I've been looking forward to covering for a few months, ever since Primal really kind of hit the scene, and there's been this jockeying for position of which is the best monster hunting game on the board game market right now. So we're going to be covering that, so let's get to it. Okay, before we dive into the campaign, I do have a challenge for you guys. If you are a subscriber to the show, if you've been watching this, hell, if you are not even a subscriber, leave a comment down below. I want to see everyone saying hello and talking about this campaign in the comment section. I always see the same 50 people talking in the comment section. I want to see more, and I know you guys are out there. I know you're subscribing and you're watching the show. Say hello. I want to see someone who I've never seen before make a comment on this video. So let's get to the campaign. Monster Hunter World, we are actually at $2 million on day one. We're at 7,963 backers, and this is brought to us by Steamforged Games. Now, this is one that we have been looking forward to seeing because there's like I said in the intro, there's been this a heavyweight match between Primal and Monster Hunter World. I do think the comparisons between the two games are a little bit misguided. I think people look at Primal and they go, that's Monster Hunter, and then obviously Monster Hunter, and they're like, that's the same game. Why do I need both? I think they're different enough that both can warrant a spot in your collection if that's something you're interested in, because there's enough differences. So let's talk about what Monster Hunter is bringing to the realm, like what are the features it's offering, and then we'll dive into the campaign, the value of each pledge level, and kind of talk about what I'm going to be doing later in the show. So Monster Hunter World will be taking place on two different areas depending on the pledge level you get. We've got the Ancient Forest, we have the Wildspire Wastes. The Ancient Forest will be considered the core or the initial pledge level. The second one comes in an additional pledge level. We'll cover that later. And so what this game is going to do is you as a group of hunters are going to be going on a hunt, and you're going to be using a storybook narration, choose your own adventure type of gameplay system. During this system, you are going to be tasked with reading the narration and choosing different paths you're going to want to take. Depending on the paths you take, your heroes can hit pitfalls or get benefits. You can get tracking tokens, and all of these things are going to affect the final battle eventually when you run into your target. For example, you'll be getting tracking tokens. You'll either be grabbing them or discarding them throughout the game, and those tokens will reflect on what kind of special moves or what kind of abilities your monster will have when you eventually run into them. You can also have pitfalls that'll damage your health and affect your gameplay aspects. And you can also be using potions, and there's a time tracker in terms of you don't want to take too long because things are moving at a certain pace. So you're going to be navigating through this read your own adventure, choose your own adventure, and it's basically you read a little blurb. For example, you find a bunch of bones on the coast. Do you search for tracks to see where the monster is, or look for clues in the bones, and then go to page 21 or go to page 36, etc. So you'll do that until you eventually run into the monster. Then, once we get into the actual combat scene, where you'll be fighting these monsters on this map, you will be playing cards. I want to see if there was a better. I wish there was a better system that I could show you. The board. Here we go. So then you'll be playing these cards here onto this board to dictate what kind of attack you're going to do and what kind of ability they're going to do. And those cards will be flipping over combat cards. Yeah, I wish I had a picture of it. You can see this little tube here. That's the combat damage. So it'll tell you flip over 3 cards or flip over 2 cards, and you'll add that damage up, and you'll take that from the main health of the monster you're fighting, as well as the region as of where you're attacking. So on the monsters, there is, I really wish they had a very clear, like, here is the way it's laid out. They don't. On the monsters, okay, you can kind of see right here, they have little icons. It's so small, guys, so I'm just going to kind of explain it. They have icons of where each monster can, one, be attacked. So if you're in a certain quarter, you can attack its legs, its tails, its torso. You know, depending on where you're at here on these dots, this is the movement of location where you're going to go. You can attack the monster, and there are two different ways you can attack. You can attack, of course, the main core health. For example, this monster on this art has 60 health, which is quite a bit of damage, but you're going to be doing damage in droves. Like, you're going to be doing a lot of damage. And then you also have break damage, which is this icon here. So there's going to be a value of how much you have to break in a certain area to unlock, you know, the special gear, which will unlock the progression system and the crafting system for a campaign mode if you're looking to move on to more difficult monster hunts. So that is essentially the game. It's going to be, players are going to be dancing around. There's going to be very much a lot of ballet-like movements and a dance between the monster and the players, utilizing different types of strategies. Like, do you have a guy attack who has less stamina because he's used additional cards so that he can lure a monster closer to another player who has a full stamina bar ready to go? There are instances of strategy involved in this game, although my opinion, from some of the card flips, at least from what I've seen so far, I have not played this game, so that is a trigger warning or something like that. I haven't played this game, so note that from what I've seen of gameplay and what I've seen of the rule book, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of like way to unrandomize this damage deck. Now, I could be completely wrong, or that could be changed in the future. I apologize for that. But from what I've seen, people are just drawing cards from the top of the deck, 2, 3, 5, and counting that number and assigning that damage. So if there are ways to mitigate that or guarantee more higher damage cards and specific attacks, I would love to know. So that is the presence of the deck. Now, Primal was a way. Now, we're going to talk too much about Primal. If you want to watch Primal video, I'll post one up here. But Primal was more of a deck building combat game where you're going to build a deck and you are then going to play cards from your constructed deck, and it's not going to be playing on a map like this. In Primal, the monster sits center, and the hunters will just kind of move around in a kind of an abstract-like movement, instead of Monster Hunter, which is more of a traditional game where the players and the monster are going to be moving around these boards, utilizing these little pips or holes or whatever you want to say. So that is the idea of this gameplay versus versus Primal. I definitely think they're two different games. Yes, they are hunting monsters in both, but they definitely have completely different types of gameplay styles. The one that works for you is probably the one I'd recommend. But let's talk about the campaign's pledge levels, because there are people who are looking at both, and we want to make sure we're getting the right pledge level for us. Okay, so let's take a look at the pledge levels. Now, Steamforged Games was a little bit more upfront with us in terms of what they said the pledge levels were going to be. I appreciate that, because we've known this for about 2 months now about how much we should expect to pay for this. It is good to note that it is in pounds, British pounds, which is a lot lower in terms of like the number for an American US dollar or euro. You can see it's closer. You can see that conversion rate up here. So if you are a US backer and you're looking at the pound, make sure you know that that is British pounds, not US dollars. So for the first pledge level, they have the entry pledge. This will get you the game. It's going to get you 4 hunters, 4 monsters, no daily unlocks. This is just a straight board game. So you can see you got the tokens here. You've got the monsters. At least they're giving us the 2 most, actually I would say 3 most iconic creatures, at least for the board game sense. And we got some good hunters here, which I like. The problem I'm having with this is going to be a game that, one, it's a Kickstarter. It's going to have a lot of stretch goals. We're expecting to get daily unlocks or monetary unlocks. These guys are doing daily unlocks. So we want to see more of what we're going to get than on a retail level. This to me just seems like the retail level, but you got to pay for shipping. Now, there is a little bit of a discount of what they're telling us in terms of what the retail MSRP will cost. But again, it's going to pretty much offset because of the retail. If you are looking at buying this game, I would not recommend the entry pledge. I think it's going to be wash. At that point, you can just wait till reviews come out from people who have either bought the game or from content creators who had to back the game as well and then do the review at that point to see if the game is worth it for you. I don't think necessarily the entry pledge is the one we're going to be looking for. Now, the next pledge level is one where I would say it's more common for people to diving into this, but we're getting to the point where the cost is going to be relatively reasonable, like expensive, not reasonable, but more like we're getting there. So the core pledge, technically, the middle pledge, it's going to be $140. Now, this is going to include some more monsters. We're going to get 3 XL monsters and 1 XXL monster, as well as 4 hunters. And that's going to include as well another group of hunters, and this will get us the additional board. So here are the different monsters that they're going to be including in this pledge. And so in this level, you'll also be getting the Kaluyaku Kickstarter exclusive. Now, the Kickstarter exclusives, they do mention that they have the right to sell those at any of their conventions or their sale or their board. So just note that they're not going to be necessarily as a limited time. But you can see here, I want to go back up to the actual, that's the entry pledge. This one will be offering basically 2 core boxes. So right here, you're going to get the Ancient Forest core box, so one we talked about at the entry level, and then you're going to get the Monster Hunter World the Wildspire Wastes core box. So basically 2 different core boxes, but it's same game, but you're just getting more monsters. Now, most likely, I'm guessing the one that everyone that is going to be backing this game, and I said the exact same thing for Primal, because in those kind of games, you are hunting, you want to have as many different varieties of monsters to hunt and to experience. And so I believe most people are looking at the all-in pledge. The $289 is a hit. It's definitely going to be one of those things that's like, man, that's a painful back. And I talked about this on my Monday episode, and I've talked about this on a few other campaigns, that this, especially this first quarter for Kickstarter, has been relatively hard on people's dollars. And so we have to be really sure that we're spending our money in a proper way, that we're going to be enjoying this game. Don't try to chase this game because of FOMO. Don't chase this game because you think it's going to be good. I really want you guys to look at the game, look at all the reviews, look at the gameplay, and see if this game is going to be worth it for you, because if you're dropping $300 plus an additional $40 in shipping, it's going to add up. But what do we got in the all-in pledge? You're going to get those original 2 core boxes that we talked about, as well as the Kickstarter exclusive. But we're going to get some large monsters as well as some additional hunters. You're going to get the Hunter Arsenal pack, which is going to come with a whole wide range of new hunters, as well as some big XL monsters. So here's more additional hunters. I personally am not as big of a fan as the aesthetic of this game. I'm a big time gamer for both video games and board games. And it's funny that the last 2 IPs we've covered, I've never touched. In Monster Hunter, another game I've never touched. So I'm not necessarily in love with the lore or the design choices of these games. I believe Monster Hunter World is a Japanese IP, so it's going to have a lot more of these ultra super grand weapons. As you can see, these guys have just ridiculously large weapons, which is more common in those Japanese RPGs. But then we're going to take a look at these dragons. Now, this dragon looks incredible. Massive scale on some of these guys. This guy also looks incredible. I love these horns. This guy's wingspan, not as quite as impressive as the, which I don't think you guys can see. No, I cut it off. I've got the Joan of Arc dragon. Not quite as impressive in terms of wingspan scale, but definitely this is the kind of dragon that I'm looking for. This is a really, really cool sculpt. This guy is also cool. Kind of looks like a dog. I mean, I guess that's kind of what his impression was supposed to be. But definitely really feeling the mini on this one. And this is also a Kickstarter exclusive. So you can also pick these up as individual purchases. You can see the value that they're holding on these minis at $60. I do think that's actually probably a fair price for the size of these minis. These are 120 millimeter bases. You can actually scroll down a little further, and they have right here, they actually have a true scale. So if you're curious of what the actual scale of some of these minis are, 255 millimeters is very tall. Considering that the average mini for most board games we play, on average, is 35 millimeters, consider how big this dragon is. Like most little figurines, like Gloomhaven, I believe, is also a 35 millimeter scale. That is massive. And they do that 35 millimeter scale because that is considered what a 6-foot person would be in this size. So consider if a 6-foot person was 35 millimeters, you can do the math in terms of how tall this guy is. Now, obviously, that's not his head. That's his wingspan reach. But still, it's obviously giant. Same with this guy, 132 millimeters, so 33 millimeters. I still think that's using the 35 millimeter scale. This guy might be like 5'6" or something. But definitely incredible size of some of these minis, and I really like this this T-Rex looking bird thing. Definitely cool. So we are going to skip back to my face. We're going to finish up this campaign, and I'm going to talk about what I'm thinking I'm going to do, because I've gone back and forth on this one quite a bit. I originally was not going to back this game. Up front, I was like, I went in on Mythic Dungeons or Mythic Battles, Ragnarok. That is the final spending I want to do for this month. I've already gone in on Primal, so do I need another boss battler? But this one has intrigued me. And the gameplay, when I watched the gameplay, was enough. It was good enough for me to be like, put a pause and say, you know what? Maybe there is something here that I want. I think the biggest question to me is I want to see the rest of the daily unlocks, and I want to see is what I'm getting at Kickstarter level worth it for me to drop $300, because that's the reality for me. Now, if I was going to not back the all-in, if I was going to be a person, I think the other option to me is, again, the core pledge. I don't think the entry pledge is worth it at all, and I wouldn't recommend any of my friends to back it. You guys are my friends, and this is how we're talking. So if I was going to back this game, which I'm not backing it right now, let you know that right now, I am not backing this game at the moment, but I'm intrigued. And I'm going to be watching this campaign very closely. I'll update you guys as we go. We obviously cover at the end of the month, actually the beginning of the month, what I backed and didn't back. So this will obviously be on that episode. This will actually still be, it's a short campaign, so this will be done before the end of the month. So we will know at that time what I officially have done. I'll try to let you guys know before the end of the campaign, though, officially where I'm at on this one, because I do think this is going to be more difficult of a decision. Now, I will say that the campaign is doing relatively well. It's doing really well. $2 million on day one. That's mostly because it's got a big IP behind it, and you're getting pumped by a lot of not only board game content creators, you're getting pumped by a lot of PC and video game news outlets as well, trying to grab that IP from the video gaming realm. So you're going to get a lot of video game players as well as board game players. They did a great job bringing in content creators from every realm to say, here, let's talk about this game. So yeah, that's my opinion about Monster Hunter World. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Again, this is all unscripted and from the heart. I just kind of talk to you guys like you are my best friends, and we want to make a decision about a board game coming out on Kickstarter. If this was helpful for you, please remember to leave a comment down below. I gave you guys that challenge early in the video. I want to know who is new or subscribed and never said hello. Please say something in the comment section down below. I want to see a bunch of new faces in the comment section. Of course, if you are an old-time friend, you're more than welcome to comment as well. Remember, hit the like button to support the channel, and I will talk to you all very soon.